Hello all, here we are going to learn about the basic properties of charges. These are some of the basic properties of charges: additivity of charges, conservation of charges, quantization of charges. Let us learn about them in very high detail. First, let's learn about the additivity of charges. The law states that if you have a body in which you have Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, etc. as the charges, then the total charge of the body is the sum of the individual charges. Okay, so if a body has charges Q1, Q2, Q3, etc. Qn inside the body, then the charge of the whole body is equal to the sum of the charges. Let us consider an example to understand this. Suppose a body has 5 charges, 1, 2, etc. So the total charge of the system will be the sum of these charges. Here we must understand that the sign of the charge is taken into consideration. Whether it is positive or negative, it has to be considered while adding the charges. The positive sign represents that the charge is positive and this is a negative charge. The next property is called conservation of charges. The conservation law is very similar to that of the law of conservation of energy. The law states that the net charge of a system can neither be created nor be destroyed, and that the total charge of an isolated system remains constant. But there is something that you should all understand, and that is nature is capable of creating neutrons, and neutrons have the capacity to split into protons and electrons. Therefore, isn't this a violation of the law of conservation of charges? No, it is not. Why? Because we are not saying that charge cannot be created. We are saying the net charge of the system cannot be changed. Even though nature is creating neutrons that have the capacity to split into protons and electrons, the number of protons released and the number of electrons released is the same. Therefore, they cancel each other's effect and the net charge remains constant. That is what the law is talking about. The next is called as the law of quantization of charges. The law of quantization says Q is equal to N into E. Let us first understand what is Q, what is N, and what is E. Consider a body. Consider that this body has 4 electrons. E is the symbol that is used to represent electrons. Suppose this body has 4 electrons. So the total charge of the body is given by the property of additivity of charges. We can say the total charge in the body is what? E plus E plus E plus E, which is 4 into E. Suppose instead of 4 electrons we had 5 electrons, then the total charge of the body would have been 5 into E. Now let us consider that this body has N charges, N number of electrons, many electrons, N electrons. Then the total charge in the body would be N into E, and the charge of the body is represented by Q. Hence the formula Q is equal to NE, where Q is the charge of the body as a whole, N is the number of electrons, and E is the charge of a single electron. The value of E is given by 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulomb. Coulomb is the unit of charge. this law also says something else. This law states that a body cannot have any value of charges. It can only have those values of charge that are integral multiples of the electronic charge. N is an integer because it represents the number of electrons in the body, and therefore N cannot be a fraction. Therefore this body can only have those values of charges which are integral multiples of the electronic charge. This is called as quantization of charges.